Hello and welcome to Get the Table, a roundtable discussion podcast. I'm Michael Sidgwick, joined by Michael Hamflett to play a little game today. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure to subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube for daily wrestling podcasts where we preview and review Raw, SmackDown, the show formerly known as NXT 2.0. Dynamite, Collision, pay-per-views, premium live events. We play games sometimes. We have wrestler interviews on occasion. We do question and answer time podcasts, roundtable wrestling discussions, and we host a roundup of the week complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WhatCulture. But today, in a little disruption from our regularly broadcast schedule, we're going to play a little game. It's a great game. It's a great game. Did Tony Khan fumble or not fumble the following wrestlers who have now exited AEW per various reports, PW Insider, the AllEliteWrestling.com roster page, etc., etc. Malakai Black, Miro, and Ricky Starks, because you are going to get tired at some point of hearing, did Khan fumble or not fumble these wrestlers? We're going to go wrestler by wrestler, a little overview of their AEW run, the good, the bad, the ugly, the nonsensical, Malakai Black, and arrive at our answers between the two of us, just so it's on the record, because we'll probably get asked it quite a few times. Shall we begin?
Yeah.
We're going to begin with Malakai Black. So the stage is set. It's one of the rare, great, elusive wrestling works where, due to an administrative hiccup, Malakai Black is given, per the terms of his NXT deal, which were never updated when he made the jump to the main roster, 30 days instead of 90. But because everyone expects it to be 90, no one expects him to turn up at Road Rager, the first AEW show not to take place at either Daly's Place or QT Marshall's gym since March 2020. So he arrives. There's a great little moment where early in the night, the lights flicker. It's in fact during Cody versus QT Marshall, I think. The lights flicker and then there's that was weird. And then the lights go out full stop. And then he gives the black mass to Arn Anderson later in the show. And then he has the feud with Cody. He wins the first match back at Daly's Place. They went back too early. In my opinion, they could have made that really special. I was really quite annoyed by that at the time, but doesn't matter. I'm not here for that. He then has one of the first naked 50-50 programs where he gets the win, Cody gets the win back. There's probably a third match. It's all a bit of a Codyverse muddle. And then what happens in parallel to Malakai Black's first furtive steps in AEW is that the sign Punk, Danielson, and Cole out of the way, Malakai Black and Andrade. Malakai Black then teams with Andrade against Cody and Pac on the basis of, my wife was your valet in the Fed, and it's all a bit, what are we doing here? And then is Malakai finished? Actually, no, the Kings of the Black Throne with the debuting Brody King, they rule as a unit. And then Buddy Matthews comes into the mix. The House of Black is formed. The House of Black get very over. The Trios title follow. They are Trios champs. They are in the mix, but not. And then you start to realize, hang on, Mally Black ain't wrestling a lot of singles matches, and he's certainly not taking any pins.
Yeah.
And then the rumors and then the innuendo follow him around like a bad smell. It feels like he doesn't really want to be present. There's the first, this is my first goodbye at All Out 2022.
It's good stuff.
It's all good stuff. And then he's like,
it's off the hit album Grace.
Yeah. And then he does the job to He takes the pin in a trios match at All Out 2022, I think it is, against Miro, Sting, and Darby Allin. There is a report.
Does that on the top of the ramp, doesn't he? Gives it the order.
He does, but why? What is it about waving my hand from side to side makes you think I'm actually saying goodbye? I'm here forever. There are rumors that he's put in the release request as soon as Levesque takes charge. It isn't granted, apparently, and then he comes back in the House of Black with the trios titles, have this program with the Acclaimed that isn't particularly great, doesn't need to go as many matches as it does. There are in-ring high spots. His 2-minute match within a match against Kenny Omega at Revolution 2023 is incredible. That trios match in general is awesome. That's the peak of the run. And then the Acclaimed thing, I know I'm going all over the place, follows. There's a feud with FTR on Collision, which ends in escape the cage rules, escape the pin rules, escape the job rules. And then every time he sporadically appears, it always seems to be in a stipulation that allows him not to be pinned, or a trios match where, buddy, you can do this one again. I think it's your turn, is it? And then he has this match last year with Adam Cole where he does this, oh, come on, you have defeated me, fine, sir.
Yeah, he does jumble his way out of the territory.
Yeah. He goes, yes, well, at long last, I have been defeated.
I doff my trilby to you, sir.
Yes, I do. Long last, he does this really bizarre, scene-stealing, noble warrior exit. He sort of symbolically says goodbye, and then a day later, I'm not going anywhere. What are you doing?
Stupid idiot.
And I like them, but this annoyed me. His stablemates in the House of Black have some fun with it on socials the next day, going, hey, he ain't going anywhere, you dumb marks. Where do you think he's going? 2 months later, he's gone.
Yeah.
He is gone. So, Michael Hamflett, I ask to you,
Not fumbled.
No.
Not for me, Jeff. Not by a long chalk.
Was it Benno, friend of the podcast, who said I would drive him to Orlando myself?
It certainly sounds like Benno. And Benno, my friend from Benno and Hamflett in Your House, wherever you get your podcast, is a BritRes lifer. He has put in the money and the miles watching the likes
and the bumps.
Indeed, watching the likes of Tommy End. Coming to various UK territories, and we'll just be Tommy End, be Aleister Black, be Malakai Black. And yeah, I don't think it was a bad run by any means. I don't think it was a waste of time and talent, and we were talking about fumbles, but you can have 2021 we're talking about when he debuted. So that's a 4-year run with stops and starts. I know. Over 4 years, it's okay to have things that went well and things that didn't. That's completely reasonable when you've got a weekly television product to consider. But ultimately, like the House of Black, which was obviously shaped in his image and was so controlled by the pre-existing Malakai Black character, was so immediately repackaged into a similar but different act in the Hounds of Hell, just without him in it.
Yeah.
That it's kind of made a bit of a mockery of the run lasting as long as it did. I don't think that's by design. I don't think AEW have done that cynically. And Brody King and Buddy Matthews and Julia Hart, I imagine, will be very grateful for the profile that stable gave them in the House of Black. But I just think it's really telling that he leaves and the Hounds of Hell become the Hounds of Hell. It's let's be honest, aesthetically and in every other respect, it's a sideways move. But straight away, everybody is like, I'll back them more than ever, if anything. I think that's really telling. Yeah. It's not a knock on Malakai Black's personality, or as you have kind of highlighted, the times at which he said, come on, guys, why all the crazy speculation? Well, because you caused it, Malakai.
and you're now gone.
Yeah, that has left a bit of a bad taste. But I don't think the pivot that everybody has just seamlessly made to the House of Black is simply over the bad taste, at the Hounds of Hell, excuse me. I think it's because ultimately over time, people grew a little bit sick of the sense that nothing could really happen to the House of Black. Yes, they would win. Yes, they would lose. Trios belts would come, trios belts would go. But when you're that group, does a loss really hurt because you don't sell pain, you don't sell defeat? Does a win really matter because you don't sell glory? You don't
want the titles and nothing.
It's always nothing.
So you think it's a bad fit from the start then? Because I do.
A little bit. I don't think it was a fumble. I think it was a fine run that could have peaked higher, but like even then had a ceiling. Realistically, I think a lot of the stuff was overthought. I don't necessarily think the Malakai Black brand of creative was beneficial to AEW overall either. I think I don't put this on him, but the type of ideas that his creative opens up to others, I think is bad for a product. I think you have to isolate them to certain characters.
Yeah.
You only need to look at his feud with Cope. That image, one of the defining Malakai Black images, is one that you can't even see his face in because it looks like it's been blown clean off by buckets and gallons of orange blood.
Yes.
You know what I'm on about?
Yeah.
Like, Cope gets very easily drawn into nonsense.
He brings out the worst
creative like that.
Yeah.
Like Cody gets brought into that sort of thing. Malakai Black has a habit of making people like
worse
about his type of creative rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was necessarily what fit best in AEW.
So he's not the new Undertaker for you then?
Probably not, Sidge.
Okay. Well,
I didn't need the old one, so I've never been exactly clamoring for a new one.
No, me neither. Well, game within a game.
It's time to play the game! Time to play the game! Ha 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 ha!
Can you remember anything Malakai Black's ever said?
No.
Like seriously, I cannot remember a thing he said.
God no. It all looked good. He's in a dark room, and then spotlight. Julia. We are the house. Spotlight. Brody. Oh. Spotlight. Buddy. In the house. Spotlight. Me. Always wins. And Sheen. That's what it was to me every time.
Yeah.
100% of the time it was that.
Certain supernatural word salad, like forged in combat and heavy is that. Oh, where's the crown? I don't know what you're talking about, mate. I haven't got a blues clue. What you're saying to me, or what you're trying to convey, and maybe I'm just not up on my occult history and my riddles and all the rest. I haven't got a clue what you're on about. And I don't think I care to piece it all together if there's anything to piece together. My take on Malakai Black, and I really hate God, he was fumbled. People have got hard-ons for anything supernatural.
Yeah.
Mercifully, this trend seems to have gone away, but you'll know this. You've lived through this for years. For years, it was, God, didn't Mordecai have potential? And I'm not saying that Malakai Black was worse or the same as Mordecai. Obviously, in the ring, and I love his leg sweeps. Mm-hmm. I love that that feint with one elbow and that back elbow and those Muay Thai influences. Like some of the stuff he can do in that ring makes him feel like a really, like the certain snapshots. I love that spot in some 4-way ladder match or other. It all blends into each other. If you do it too much, Tony Khan, when there's a ladder teetering against the ropes, and he almost treats it like a poltergeist when he gets a top rope, flicks it into someone's face. It's like there are always great little concepts in what Malakai Black, Aleister Black, as he'll inevitably be known shortly, can just do. That makes me think, oh God, if you just weren't so delusional about this idea that you could be the new Undertaker or that you're a megastar, where if you just sort of understood your role and played it, there's a great mind in there somewhere. It's just this mind thinks it's something else, and it's not. He had a singles match against Brian Keith on Collision that was so sludgy. The guy didn't have it. If he was in perfect physical nick, and I know this will raise his ire, he hated the idea of people thinking he was injured. He'd made it perfectly clear. First of all, he never made anything perfectly clear. But in his mind, in his words, he'd made it perfectly clear that he was completely healthy and good to go.
You haven't made perfectly clear in your goddamn life.
He hasn't. So, but
no.
Whether he was carrying an injury or a knock, he had that match with Brian Keith. I think it was last year on Collision. It was like, this is pretty sludgy, and you're clearly not the same guy. You might not be injured, but you can't really put a body part or a diagnosis on thrashed, washed, past it. you know,
I just don't
over the hill, you know.
I don't think you can call it a
Finished.
sustained push. A fumble?
You know, below the level you once were, you know.
He had a sustained push for the majority of his run, and when he didn't, when it was brought to a screeching halt, there were a lot of discussions around why that was, and so much of it came down to like creative disagreement. But then the group are back on telly and they're winning, or the group are back on TV and they're dominant in Fuex. And I don't.
And they never really lost decisively in any Fuex that they had,
really?
other than the Acclaimed.
Other than the Acclaimed, they put the Acclaimed over, yeah. I like on supernatural characters and Malakai Black and Aleister Black and how he fits in and all that. I've said before, I felt like, because I'm not into that either, and yet in what was maybe one of
Never
the
works. Even like I've post Undertaker. I'm sorry, I'm stepping on your dick. Even when it works, it doesn't work. The White Six worked even for me, and that's just petered away.
Was he one of the very last genuine creative, like back end of Triple H's NXT Golden Era success stories? Like if you think about it, I would say he was, because that character was very him,
people,
and yet his moves didn't feel disjointed when he got in there. Like you've seen this, like it wasn't a magic power wrestler. He had the cool kicks and he had the like amazing quick strikes and counter game and stuff like that. And he was credible as a potential world champion and the like. And yes, there was a lot of theatrics to the coming up on the pallet lifter and the candles and Code Orange and all the rest of it. But when the bell rang, it was a different style to that. And if anything, it was the contrast that made it work. And like, I remember liking Aleister Black in spite of myself because of that.
Yeah.
So there's a controlled environment in which that works, I think.
Yeah, we'll probably see it.
Maybe. I don't know. I think injuries and age do catch up.
Yeah.
And we are talking, I would say 2016, 2017, that character peaked in NXT. And all of those dates, all those Golden Era matches are coming up on 10 years old. You know, we're hitting, it's 9 years, 8 years, and injuries and, you know, all the rest of it. So I don't think it's a guarantee that Triple H just makes it work magically. I think it starts well.
Yeah.
The pop. The return.
Yeah.
He feels like a nailed on Raw after WrestleMania return if the contract works out or whatever. But
not signed in 2022.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I don't know. I liked it when he squashed Cody. I felt something for that. Cody took the boots off and never wrestled again.
That Amenra entrance.
Yeah.
Before that, obviously we're going to use Brody King's music. That Amenra entrance and that
fight shorts.
The fight shorts.
It felt right.
The like the pagan style mask, whatever it was, I thought he looked the business. I was so high on Malakai Black originally, but what I'm going to say is it might work out better in WWE where there is a working standard, there is, but it's nowhere near as like, you know, there's Will Ospreay and Hangman Page and Swerve and Kenny Omega in AEW. It's different there, and I will say that you cannot possibly, if you get it, look at that singles match, which maybe he got dragged kicking and screaming into do just to, you know, bat away the accusations for a few months or whatever. That singles match with Collision on Brian Keith, you cannot tell me. Apparently he was free of injury when he wrestled this match. It wasn't a bad match. It was nowhere near the standard of a great AEW TV match, let alone what is expected in these Ospreay tier matches on the pay-per-views now. You cannot tell me that they fumbled Malakai Black single star, because I think at some point Malakai Black, if Tony Khan went, all right, okay, you want to be a singles guy, a megastar, I'll give you the belt and you can beat everybody for like 9 months. He probably would have done that. You cannot tell me the Malakai Black who wrestled that match on Collision against Brian Keith had the stuff to be what Tony Khan wants his AEW main eventers to be.
Yeah.
So you couldn't have fumbled. They can't say, he fumbled Malakai. That version of Malakai isn't wrestling Ospreay tier matches. And for better or worse, in terms of excitement, athleticism, you know, how dynamic these matches are, whether you like them or you don't, that's what AEW wants to do more often than not. And it's big main event or big sort of dream match selling points. He couldn't have fumbled Malakai because Malakai can't do that. He proved to me in that match against Brian Keith. And you know what? If that's too small a sample, why didn't he do more singles matches to prove that he could go? Well, and then you arrive at the same thing that people don't like to talk about.
You've opened up, I think, a conversation that might come up again with the next two we're going to talk about, but we've kind of touched on this in our weekly reviews of the shows. That match tier, that pay-per-view main event match tier, and how it's a closed club and you got to fight to earn your place in that closed club. You're Ospreay, Hangman, Swerve, Omega. And it should stay closed.
Yeah.
And somebody has to work. Swerve is the last one to truly prove that he belongs in that tier. WWE's version of that.
Fletcher as well.
WWE's version of that is the megastar tier that your likes of Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest want a fight to belong in.
Yeah.
And I think that's an entirely different test for Aleister Black to try and pass. And I'm interested to watch that.
Yeah.
Like in this environment that he wants to be a part of, we can assume from previously working successfully with Triple H and collaborating. I'm still, despite all of this and what might sound like a bit of just an entirely negatively slanted view on someone like a Malakai Black, I am interested all over again to see if Aleister Black feels like he can be in that Punk. No, Punk, Roman and Cody is the very, very, very top, right? You got to get
Drew,
there
Seth,
first.
Sami, Kevin.
The Drew, Seth, Sami, Kevin, and then can he excel past there in a year's time? Are we going to be talking about come January, one of that like Final Four Rumble entrance, Aleister Black, for example? It's going to look awesome on Netflix. What can what's left of him plus the smoke and mirrors do for his like acceleration of that card? I'm keen to see it because the 2020 main roster he joined was no good for him, just as he was no good for it.
Yeah.
So
I want to see New World WWE producing and presenting Aleister Black.
Yeah.
I really do. I think then the bell will ring, but it's a different sound of bell in WWE. Before we move on, I've said some nice things about Mally Black in the ring and the presentation, all the rest of it. I want to say one more nice thing. We went to Vegas. We were privileged to go for the Dynamite before and Double or Nothing 2023. He was on the tier of the most over in the House of Black. People loved them in those buildings.
yeah,
So,
there's deep-rooted feeling towards him, definitely.
there is. But
Kind of scares me about the comments section, actually. Be nice.
please be nice and watch that match back with Brian Keith. When I say they did not fumble Mally Black, because for better or worse, AEW was an expectation for in-ring in these big main events or these big Ospreay middle of the card matches that he could simply not level up to. So for me, Malakai Black, no fumble.
No fumble.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Let's move on. Miro.
Ooh.
So Miro, released by WWE, as so many do, shows up in AEW as the best man of Kip Sabian ahead of the wedding to Penelope Ford. Mm-hmm. Now, the idea is that he's not just Kip Sabian's best mate, which is a bit weird. I think it's meant to be a modern-day version of Mr. Perfect, with the idea being that Miro was really, Rusev Day was Rusev Day. Miro was considered how can you not push this dude? What an all-rounder he is. Mm-hmm. Great in the ring, or very good in the ring, believable in the ring. Can play a heel menacingly. He's a funny guy who could be a babyface. People just gravitated towards Rusev. He's the best man. He's the best at being a good guy, the best at being a menacing heel, whatever. And then this feud, and I think we might have been nicer than most, retroactively thinking maybe they just wanted to delay Arcade Anarchy, because it was a meme how long that feud between the best friends and Miro and Kip Sabian went, especially when like the merest hint of conflict, there was just a match graphic ready for so many other Dynamite matches. Maybe it was, we need to wait for Statlander, wait for Stat to come back, and then we'll have this great idea for the Toy Story, and then whatever. And then Miro turns on Kip Sabian, batters him in this awesome angle. This awesome angle at the end of the Daily's Place residency, becomes the Redeemer. Mm-hmm. The Redeemer is awesome. Miro has this promo style and this screenwriter tier turn of phrase with his threats where it's like, he is scary. He is terrifying. They build him. He beats Darby Allin, who the week before has taken the tumble down the stairs, Daily's Place, beats him, is the TNT champion, the gorgeous bespoke title design. He is a great, great proper in the real mold of a TV champion. They build the idea that he's got this one weak spot on his neck, and that informs the hope spots and makes them believable, but bad neck or bum neck and all, he'll find a way to win. He then loses to Sammy Guevara.
Yeah.
It's fine. That was the moment where it's like, people don't like failing upwards and booking, but kind of got to be done sometimes. I say it a lot. Episodic wrestling TV is kind of flawed. I think if there was ever a time where he can fail upwards into a world title program, yeah, go for it. It's Miro. He was awesome. He was awesome. And then
spoke to how much they thought of him, that they thought this is going to be Sammy Guevara's star-making match.
Yeah.
They're asking something of Miro because they believed in the character so much they could help get, like how many times has Tony Khan tried to get Sammy Guevara up?
Yeah.
Miro was another one of those attempts.
Yeah. So this is 2021 when he does the job to Sammy Guevara.
Everything was good.
Everything was good. Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing before we move on, because I will forget this and it's just popped into my head. The Miro Redeemer run was incredibly impressive because Andrade didn't have this. He was a no fumble, by the way. Malakai Black didn't have this. But Miro as the Redeemer had this thing where it was like, you got Kenny and Hangman going on. MJF and Jericho yielded some brilliant TV. Punk's debuted. CM Punk's debuted, for Christ's sakes. You've got Danielson. Cole, star power has faded, but he felt like a massive deal. When you look back at 2021 and that, I would describe it as the invincible era of AEW. Miro as Redeemer is like on that tier of unforgettable brilliance. Then, allegedly echoing the deal with Malakai Black, there are reports, and of course they get debunked, everything gets debunked, but there are reports that Miro has pitched creative ideas. Nope. What about that? Nope. And then he just falls away. And he's just not. I think there's an injury at certain points or a certain point, but then the reports follow around Miro again, and then is he turning down creative? What's going on? There's a killer match with Danielson along the way, but then apparently Ethan Page volunteers to do the Miro run, and a wrestler who will round off this podcast has that sort of thing. And then Miro just disappears off the face of the earth. And then there are vignettes where he's like, I want to come back to my flexible wife or whatever. I'm coming for gold. That just disappears. He then partners up with Sting and Darby Allin, as we mentioned, and then he's just gone again. And he's away for a long old time. Then he has that weird program with Andrade of like, well, one of you has to do a job. Yep. And that was like the creative. I can't even remember anything about it other than CJ Perry coming back in. And then
at a World's End match that we talked about on the news today that Murray described as like AEW's version of Goldberg and Brock at WrestleMania 20.
Yes.
Which one's going to go? Or is it both?
Yeah. And who's going to job?
Yeah.
Like all the intrigue was just completely beyond the fiction of it. And then Miro wins, doesn't he?
Yes.
Because Andrade is out the door.
It's a real under-discussed low ebb of AEW, that match.
Yeah,
what it represents.
Oh,
and
that
kind of cloud
entire
over all of
card.
it. CJ Perry has just injured a finger, and she's like blaming Miro for it, and it has nothing to do with the story.
Yeah.
Neither of these men want to be there. The creative couldn't even try to make sense. Yeah. It's not a good match.
No.
It's Nadir on top of Nadir on top of Nadir on top of Nadir, I would say that.
2 seconds.
It's a good show, World's End 2023. It's oh, great. I couldn't remember if that was the...
Highlighted by Moxley Kingston.
Oh, yeah.
The fuse of Acclaim for the old Continental Classic, but then the Jericho stuff happens and all the rest of it. And then Miro just goes away. There are reports that he's requested his release amid creative pitches, just never getting on the same level, and he's gone. You talk a little bit about Miro while I'll find a button, because I've got a game within a game.
You're cooking it there. Miro. I kind of mourn, and I mourn the lack of... Oh, God, here we go then. That's okay.
It's time to play the game! Time to play the game!
Josh Jones. You said bad match, bad vibe, Andrade versus Miro. For Christ's sake, it's not there. What did Dave Meltzer award at star ratings?
Bloody hell, man. Did he go 3.5?
I think he went 3-3.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even 4.
Better than Punk Joe. I think he did. I think you're right.
I mean, what doesn't he?
Yeah, Miro in AEW, there's no wrestler that more exemplifies this.
I've got it.
Go on, tell us what it is.
Oh, no, I'm going to play the game. What's the answer?
So I'll say 3.5.
4. What are we doing here, Dave?
4.
Anyway.
Me and you've been working on a series, more episodes dropping every Sunday that we're already very proud of. Best match ever. I don't think World's End Miro versus Andrade is going to make the cut, Sidge.
No.
It's series 84 of World's End. Should we fit it in?
Yeah.
We both just all agree, still doing it. We're going to have to get to World's End.
Yeah.
No, Miro.
God willing.
Yeah. Yes, please. I want to sit here forever. The Redeemer run, as you've articulated there, was magic. It was real magic from a company that was just producing magic out the ass. Truly one of the times when you get up every day grateful you're a wrestling fan because you're living through this, and Miro, I think you're right to point it out. It's a bit like the Attitude Era posters that feature Rikishi or the current day ones that will feature a Jey Uso. Those posters of that AEW time will feature a Miro, key player. But he really, really makes me lament what's gone a little bit wrong about the two mainstream promotions thing. They're both rich, so it behooves both the wrestlers to secure the bag and the promoters to lock down a talent for as long as possible.
Yep.
I'm sick of 3s, I'm sick of 5s, and I'm sick of thinking of talents in those terms as much as it allows them to buy their house and secure their family's financial future. Mm-hmm. Very important, more important than ever. But because you've got the two companies, I dream of the fluidity of the 6-month deal and the 6-month run and the churn of television being demolished by the fact that the talent can have the run, disappear, shake a hand of a Triple H and a Tony Khan and be like, this was great. Maybe I'll see you again in a year's time and we'll go again. It'll never come back. What I'm wishing for will never exist again. But there are so many wrestlers that fall into that category where didn't we almost have it all? But then you stuck around. I wish so much that the Redeemer was just preserved in amber. And then, let's say Triple H checks over and he's like, you know what, I'm not liking this creative. This has been nice. Let's shake hands. I'm going to give Rusev another try. And then he does Rusev for another couple of years and he starts to feel like he's getting stale again. This has been good. I kept on good terms with Tony Khan. Thanks, Triple H. Thanks, but no thanks. WrestleMania can wait for me for this year. Rings Tony Khan. Fancy another run around with Miro? And he goes, actually, I do. I could do with Miro.
I need you.
I wish that was the world because there would be a lot of wrestlers like a Miro that would fit better in it than what we've got.
Yeah. I pretty much said the exact same thing on Twitter last night when the news broke. Not that it was breaking news or a revelation. Miro in AEW had an absolutely incredible, fabled territory monster heel run in a 5-year deal, Will.
Yeah.
And these things do not belong together.
Because then the guy loses and it's okay because he moves across the postcode and they've never seen a monster before. But
my thing with Miro is he is in that hinterland between a great, great TV character, and they're so rare. They are so rare. But he's in that hinterland between a great, great TV character, not someone, if I'm booking AEW, where I'm thinking, God, he was so great and there's so much more left to do with this. And he's so unbelievable consistently all the time that he's going to be my big main event heel for 9 months. He was never that for me. Never that for me. And that's fine. He had a great, great run. But again, it's...
Do you think he wanted the world title? Do you think he just wanted to be the world champion and beat everybody?
Maybe he just thought he wanted to be with Bob Holly.
Yeah.
A lot of wrestlers do want to be Bob Holly, He wasn't in... I don't think... AEW likes having great matches. And it should. I don't think it should be so fixated, especially on Collision. Great matches, it's all great. 6 great matches. Every single week. But your obvious selling point, and you use the talent you've got and the things you've got and the audience that wants what they want. Compared to WWE, if WWE just decided to wrestle like you do in AEW and I'll take Bam, it'd be knee shot for anyone else. It's good that there is a company that can sometimes play to buildings of between 5,000 and 8,000 on great weeks, like now great months, and have that caliber of wrestling in front of that backdrop. I love it. And if you don't love it, that's what AEW is. And Miro isn't that good that he can do that in AEW for a year, in my opinion. I just don't think he was ever so great that, right, fail upwards and do that for a year. At some point, I'm thinking I kind of want my Will Ospreay matches.
Yeah.
And I think the audience kind of would as well. And the thing about Miro as well is that I can understand where he's coming from. And I'm going to invoke someone here, and I feel bad because I still find this dude really entertaining. If I'm Miro, I'm thinking, I don't want to be Lance Archer.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like Lance Archer, but Lance Archer felt like he was 11 feet tall when he first turned up in AEW. Now, because aura's everything, he feels like a guy who's bigger than the rest.
Yeah.
He was 10 foot tall. And Miro, I don't think episodic wrestling, weekly, televised, post-territory wrestling has ever got a handle on the archetype that Miro was. Go along the line. You got Lance Archer, 11 foot tall, is killer, loses too often. The mystique's gone. Now he's a fun, throwing dudes into things dude. Mm-hmm. Not a big, scary threat. Big Show. Like, he should never have lost as often as he did.
Yeah.
What's he going to do for 20 years? He'd be Bob Holly.
Yeah.
Bob Holly with, out of Chris Jericho's longevity. No, thank you. No one needs to see that. No. It's these things don't belong together. The monster archetype does not fit with the current format or the format that's been in place since WWE monopolized everything. So I understand where Miro's coming from, where he's looking at his fate and he's thinking, oh, it's a bit of a resurgent WWE. And it wasn't like CJ Perry doing interviews where she's like, well, that's the main event.
Yeah. Everyone
wants to go there. And then obviously if you're Tony Khan, you're thinking, oh, do you?
All right.
Even if he's just not speaking on your behalf, you'd start to get paranoid that she is. All the rest of it, you're thinking, all right, well, that's not great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's always tricky to book a monster. Even, and he's an arsehole and he doesn't deserve to come back, and I don't wish to see him back, but if you're going to talk about the most effective monster heels in the post-territory world, you have to think of like uber-pushed post-UFC Brock Lesnar. Mm-hmm. Like even Lesnar, whose matches were like scary and dramatic in a way, like were horrifying that nobody else can do except Lesnar. I hate to put him over, but that was the reality.
Yeah.
Even he drew resentment for winning all the time, despite being the best version of this. So does Miro stand a chance of being the Hoss Bob Holly? But I understand from his perspective as well. It's like, I don't want to be Lance Archer. I've got a mystique to protect if I go to the Fed,
I think that's it. I think I get it a bit with Miro. I like Fumble, and you've picked the word because it is often what gets thrown at a wrestling company when something doesn't work out, regardless of why the reason is. And that's why I think it makes for like an interesting case each time there's a wrestler like these three being released. But if I'm thinking of like conditional goated fumbles, generational fumbles of this time, in my gut, I feel like if you've got a wrestler who is secondary title level and there might be a time for them to go for the world title, but it's got to be now. Go, do it now, otherwise it might be never. I don't consider Miro a fumble in the way I consider like a Wardlow a fumble. And that's not to say the Wardlow thing would have worked out, but I just remember the feeling. And I remember how it was when Wardlow beat MJF. And you think, now. Go now.
And it didn't.
And it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, but you tried.
Now
fine.
is the time. And this is the only window.
I consider that a bigger fumble than what ultimately happened with Miro, because I don't think you can know for definite if it was the time to go with him when it was placed in front of them.
Yeah.
I can well picture the conversation where the creative gets turned down because Miro would have this Redeemer run.
Allegedly.
Because Miro would have this Redeemer run to be able to use as evidence of, I mean, I've come into your company and I might seem unconventional compared to some of your guys, but look how well it's gone. Mm-hmm. Imagine that in your main events instead of your semi-main. Imagine that. And he's also got, maybe I do think he was fumbled, because Rusev Day was the real deal, and it took generational creative incompetence to squash that.
Okay.
Rusev Day was his route to winning a Royal Rumble and going to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And they
didn't want
textbook Vince McMahon squandering,
Yeah.
So maybe I think he was fumbled, because if I'm looking at an entire career, I'm thinking, well, that's 2 runs where a little bit of a thumb was placed on the head.
Yeah.
And if that's happening to you, maybe it says something about you as a person, yes.
Yeah.
But the fact that you get into that stage more than once says something.
Yeah. The thing about Miro as well is the attitude haunted him in WWE. It's one of those things where it's easier because like AEW is a babyface promotion. Well, was past tense, right? So it's easier to take the side of the promoter. That's how these things work. Obviously, with Vince being as incompetent as he was and a prick, the scale of it obviously has only become apparent, like truly afterwards. But think back to, was it 2018 when he's going up against The Undertaker and he's doing the thing where he's getting the hardcore fan. He's working in front of his audience. Oh, they don't like Vince. I'll just try and pop them and maybe they'll get me so over that even Vince can't deny me. If you're Vince or if you're WWE, and yes, they're the baddies. They are always the baddies, right? But if you're just watching them on Twitter make a mockery of a match with The Undertaker, bury me softly, brother, you're thinking, oh, who are you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those things, you don't want to get it at the time because Rusev Day is Rusev Day and he's such a likable bloke and he's funny. And I got The Undertaker's old knees thrashed and this is a blood money exercise. You have if you're WWE's perspective, you're thinking, not even irreverent with us, do you? Like, piss off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to really think of it in those terms because there was a baddie and a goodie, but it's business at the end of the day, and he just totally trivialized it. I thought it was funny that he trivialized it, but he nonetheless trivialized it. And then in AEW, you know, the apparent turning of down of creative and all the rest of it. This is a challenge because it's not like Swerve Strickland or Kyle Fletcher, who are my latter-day examples of head down, do the jobs, prove yourself undeniable doing these jobs, and then if you're so undeniable, you won't be doing the jobs anymore.
Run with the ball.
Run with the ball. I can understand why wrestlers who fit that archetype and play those roles can get away with eating those defeats. With a guy like Miro and the size and the power, it's all mystique. And if he can't get over that way, otherwise you go the Lance Archer route. So I don't know if I know the answer to this question, because Miro can't do the, all right, okay, I'll give me anything and I'll run with it sort of thing. I don't know.
The neck was never exploited to its maximum potential.
No.
It was very good against, like, was it Fuego del Sol and Sammy Guevara? And you think
Brian Pillman Jr. had a good match with Miro.
There were way high ceilings with that neck that were never reached, I would say. And he built that into his character because he understood how he did need that glowing red weak spot.
Yeah, I just think a guy like Miro can't really do the, who wants it? I'll do it and I'll do whatever to get over. I don't know. I think he needs to be handled with a bit more care. But at the same time, he wasn't so great where it's like, I'll just turn down anything. He's not that Roman punk tier where it's, I'll do a job. He's stupid. He's not that.
No.
I'm going to go with not fumbled because they got the most out of them they could.
Right, okay, yeah.
What do you think?
I've taught myself into thinking it's a fumble. Because I just think there's evidence of his brilliance. And they might be...
Maybe I need to watch one of those promos again, man. They were awesome.
They were incredible. And I remember you saying at the time, like, just highlighting the linguistic flair.
Yeah.
And it was always tethered to the feud he was in at the time.
Yeah.
And then linked to something else. I think there's a special talent there, and wrestling is quite cruel if your specialness is not capitalized on. And it's happened to him twice.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see. Because all of these caveats, or like all these guys are talking about come with a caveat are, and now will WWE prove it a fumble or not? Yeah. A good WWE run won't necessarily prove that it was a fumble in AEW.
Yeah.
And I think that's the misconception all the time, isn't it? But yeah, I think he was fumbled. Because but by the end of 2023, you wouldn't think that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about post-Redeemer, a 6-month run where a guy is like almost glowing white hot.
Yeah.
Strike there, and then too often in wrestling somebody doesn't, and you almost forget what that felt like.
So Malakai Black, fumble, Miro fumble, no fumble.
Oh, Malakai Black's double no fumble.
Yeah, double no fumble. Miro is a fumble, no fumble.
That's right.
Okay, well, let's get to the final round of... Ricky Starks, fumble or no fumble. This is the most important one, hence why we've reserved it for the main event. Here we go. Ricky Starks, there's a time, cast your mind back, when, I miss these days, man, AEW Dynamite's debuted. That's your in-ring. WWE's still a laughing stock. It's brilliant to follow it week to week because it's terrible.
It's a waste.
And it's great for the discourse. So you've got, you're so bad it's good, WWE market leader, and they're awful as well. You've got AEW, like speaking truth to power and doing wrestling the way it should be, and it's brand new. It's an arena-sized upstart with the hottest, coolest wrestlers. Oh, this is awesome. What a wonderful thing to track week to week. TNA's still there. New Japan is still, it's before the belt up, double belt up evil.
Yeah.
So it's not amazing, late 2019, but, it's still sort of like up there.
Yep.
Fumes of the peak, but we're still talking.
Wrestle Kingdom 2020 was the peak.
Yeah.
Like commercially.
Yeah, absolutely. And then somehow, in this really competitive, congested landscape, you get Billy Corgan's NWA. For me, personally, the irony of, given who was involved and the attitude and the tenor they were going for of calling other promotions cosplay was outrageous because it was like completely too spec to the font color of the NWA of yore. Nonetheless,
Into the fire!
Into the fire! That baby faced it. Yep. 'Cause it was tits.
Danny Dales.
And it's how good you deal. It shouldn't get any conversation, but before they start putting microphones into AEW guy faces, it's the promo company. Because you've got Eddie Kingston, you've got Eli Drake.
Yeah, shoes of a champion.
Shoes of a champion. Yeah. And then you got Ricky Starks.
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus Christ, this kid can talk. Jesus Christ, this kid can talk like a son bitch.
I don't know why my watching Absolute.
And then the pandemic happens.
Yeah.
NWA doesn't really run. And
it's weird because they had a pretty socially distanced crowd when they were full, huh? But
and then Ricky Starks was presumably a free agent. He's just making the towns and stuff. 'Cause 2019 is super workers. And then the end of the year, things move fast. Hang on, enough of that crap. You can talk. And then Ricky Starks is like, oh, hang on. Suddenly he becomes a commodity because he's got something unusual, And then he has this match with Cody Rhodes as part of the TNT Open Challenge, and it's so good, right? The romance of the story, I think, is a little bit overstated because the Apocrypha goes...
Do not tell me that Codeman was not getting people jobs every goddamn week, Sidge. Do not take that away from me.
I'm not taking it away from you.
That's all right.
But within 5 minutes of the match, Tony Khan's got the contract and said, get that contract. That was romantic at the time and probably very earned at the time. But now, sign to like literally every wrestler ever. So it kind of undermines the story of Ricky Starks.
Just falls over in a bunch of contracts while I was back. It's like a magician with doves, but they're just contracts.
Yeah. So the romance of the story kind of is undermined by the fact that he's now signed every single professional wrestler available. But at the time, this match is like so like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Liquid pro wrestling in there, like really good, urgent, competitive spirit. This Starks guy comes off as a star. He gets promo time before the match. Signed on the spot, basically. That's how much of an impression he makes. He then quickly teams up with Team Taz. And Team Taz are a goated. Ricky Starks is amazing on the mic. You think, that's weird. He's got so much flair to be with like a Brian Cage and a Taz and these aggression types, but it just works.
It does.
It does just work.
It does just work. Are they the first, Team Taz, right? They launched in late 2020?
Mid to late 2020.
Are they the first true act of like an invincible era on the horizon? Because obviously so much of 2020 was good in spite of itself. But as you pointed out before, you kind of have to remember that even when it's great, you're watching it as a bit of a compromise.
Yeah. Bittersweet.
Bittersweet. There's things that have to be done because they have to be, not because really necessarily it was the creative choice. every bit of Team Taz is a creative choice.
Yeah.
That doesn't require the people in the building. It's this idea of like
when they were just killing people outside.
Killing people, cutting people. Like the Hobbs turn is incredible after Moxley's made him as a babyface. It's like, well, now we're going to make him as a heel. It's
that Sting cinematic match.
It's the proper old school.
Darby stuff. Ricky Starks versus Darby. That's the first time you see him like kicking him in the spine when they're both lying on the canvas.
Taz like revealing the alliance with Brian Cage because Darby had kind of been a bit rude to him backstage, and Taz has still got that dog in him to be like, don't be rude to me, I'm Taz.
I'm Taz, dickhead, I'll kill you. I'll get somebody else to kill you now.
Okay, yeah. Like the the pause of like Taz getting to do in front of the whole gang of like real nasty men.
Yeah.
It was like
they were killers. Killers in the jungle.
They were, and it's like, I know it's an empty day.
And when The Rock tried to get that off for him and Roman, and I loved it for a week.
A couple of weeks, that one. Killers in the jungle. Are you kidding me?
You kidding me?
F this, F that with the Killers in the jungle. Now F off. Yeah. Whoa. No, but like, I'm picturing the group fully formed with Taz at the front doing his old Taz pose. And it's like, well, the Invincible era is here.
Yeah.
Because the Elite are still cooking. The creativity is out the ace. Yeah. Jericho's hit and miss, but he's still cool when he's cool. Like
funny when he's funny.
Funny when he's funny. Team Taz are brand spanking new. And all of them are made.
Yeah.
Everybody in the stable's got their role, got the purpose, and is getting more over than they were before. And like the Tazza is having the time of his life, and there's Silent Hook with the hood mostly over his face. What's he gonna do one day?
He hasn't anything. I want to see it though. Then where am I at the timeline? My encyclopedic AEW brain is failing me because very early it was Texas. In that we're back and we're touring. Ricky Starks is working Brian Cage. Mm-hmm. So the turn happens at some point.
What was the night? Oh no, I'm thinking of later on with the FTW title when he puts Hook over.
That was 2022.
2022, wasn't it? Yeah.
So 2021, he's working Brian Cage, isn't he?
I think so.
For the FTW title, and he wins that because it's in Texas and it's all nice and bespoke.
He has a Philadelphia street fight with Brian Cage, does he not?
In Philly, you big dumb bitch. Then a really underrated team with Powerhouse Hobbs. Like a really underrated team with Powerhouse Hobbs. Was it Ricky Starks versus Brian Cage at that 2021?
I think so.
It must be.
I'll check. You keep talking.
I can't remember the permutations of the fallout, but he teams Pronoun Boy, Ricky Starks with Powerhouse Hobbs to the point when they have a feud with Swerve and Our Glory. Really fun because they maximize the positives and hide the negatives with Keith Lee. They do loads of cool backstage brawls and the like. And I distinctly remember Swerve and Our Glory winning the tag titles, and I'm thinking,
wins the FTW title in July at Fighter Fest 2021
in Texas.
In Cedar Park, he defeats Brian Cage for the FTW title, and then he beats him in the Philly Street fight in October on a Rampage to sort of wrap it up.
Yeah,
and then Team
probably
Taz,
weeks went by without anything happening.
Yeah, Team Taz become Hobbs and Starks. Then I don't know, when Swerve and Our Glory won those titles, I'm like, surely Hobbs and Starks. There's a bit where Hobbs and Starks are at their peak of their powers as a tag team. They're so great. And I think it's at a pay-per-view, and Ricky Starks is just like, he captures that bottles that Ric Flair, World Championship Wrestling in the background, but it's not WCW yet. Yeah.
Crockett, so full of himself. And he's like this. And Ricky Starks is going, I'm smooth, I'm suave, I'm debonair, I'm a sexy mother. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you are. And people love Ricky Starks. People love him. And then, kind of, story of my life, he is in a tag, and then they split up. Then he has the feud with Hobbs, and it's fine. I don't think it's great.
Underwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he wins it, and he then goes on to be the first TV challenger for MJF in a promo exchange so scintillating that the first defense after AEW has moved heaven and earth to really elevate MJF, there are conversations of give him the belt.
Winter was coming.
Yeah, winter was coming. Give him the belt. And then the match happens, and this is where we need to be realistic about Ricky Starks. Here's the thing about this Fumble conversation, is that with certain fans in this tribalistic landscape, if you're in AEW, you are a Wish version of The Rock. If you are then going to WWE, you become someone Tony Khan fumbled. So you can't, there's no answer. There never will be in this landscape, but we're going to try and arrive at it. So he has this wonderful verbal exchange with MJF in the conversation. I think Meltzer even had it on Observer Radio. He kind of, when you dealt a hand like that, you think about it heavily, give it heavy consideration. Then the match happens. Now, in the fullness of time, you're thinking, where would that go in the top 250 Dynamite matches ever? Anywhere near? I don't know. There were some really awkward moments in that ring. And if you remember, ahead of the match, Ricky Starks, it was all Dynamite Diamond Ring related stuff. He completely blew the promo to the point where they had to clarify the week later what the hell he was talking about.
Because he won the Battle Royal, but the match was for both, wasn't it?
And he completely failed to explain it. Yeah. So much so that I can't even remember what the actual point was. And then the match happens and there's a few stumbly-bumbly moments and a few botches and a few really awkward moments. And this has followed Ricky Starks, who has got the more important things, but he ain't getting any younger. He's in his mid-30s. Maybe he's never going to get that big match, big stage composure because...
People think he's in his 20s.
He's not. He's 35 years old, I think.
And can you
double check how old?
No, you're right, and it's a misconception. And that's fine. We're not age-shaming anybody. He'll be brand spanking zero in WWE.
Yeah.
But, people think he's like, he's like this just fresh out of wrestling school guy. And he's like deceptive.
He's not.
He's such a piece, basically.
He's such a piece.
He's 35. We're all in our 30s.
Oh, yeah.
Fact. But he's 35.
Yeah. And here are some more thoughts on Ricky Starks.
Nearly 35. Happy birthday very soon, Ricky Starks.
And this, for me, always follows him around. There is a botch or an awkward moment in a promo or a match of his almost every single time he's in a big spot, in a big high-pressure spot. Do you go with that person when you know there could be some... this could get deflated very, very quickly and suddenly, and it happens more often than not. And then after the MJF stuff, he goes to the Jericho Vortex, and there are some really awkward Starksian moments from the jump. Can you remember the speech impediment stuff?
Remind me?
I can't because it's just popped into my head.
What, when he's
doing a promo, and I'm going to very carefully research this because I don't want to speak out of turn.
Okay.
I don't distinctly remember it at all. That's hence why I'm looking at it. I dimly remember Ricky Starks, right? He's a babyface now. He's on the path. He's doing Jericho, yes, but that's usually an omen of Jericho wants you when you're hot, and hopefully you'll stay hot after, and all the rest of it. I remember he did a promo. It's like, you're really sure that's the tone that you want to go for?
Yeah. Now you're saying it, yeah. And he was kind of being a bit cruel rather than funny.
Yes.
It was an out of time sort of thing, wasn't it? That would have popped like those frat boy audiences in the late 90s Raw tapings, but didn't really belong in 2023. I do have a vague recollection of that.
So I will look at that because I don't want to, just say it and Mandela affected myself. So post Jericho, as so many of them do, he's not in the pay-per-views Jericho is. He sort of fades from relevance. And it's that year, is it not, that he gets the big bill? Team, where it's just slap together, you're not doing anything, but you're both over. Make something of this. We'll have you'll go over FTR in 4 minutes. And here's another thing that happens. Ricky Starks, they do the bit with Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho. They have that feud. It's infamously bad. Kenny Omega has diverticulitis. No one knows it. But Ricky Starks has got this phenomenal ability to make things awkward, even though it was just destined to be awkward because Kenny Omega wasn't right. He wasn't with it.
Yeah.
And it's when Chris Jericho goes, "We haven't got a team name yet. Big Billy Starks. Big Billy Starks," or whatever he says, and it gets no reaction. Then Ricky Starks goes, "Well, that fell flat." And it's like this very closely followed the Cope thing, where it's like, do you know you're not meant to win? It's not a battle.
I'm seeing people saying that Cope had something to do with his television. Twitter nonsense.
Yeah,
chat,
okay.
Lots of people saying, I wonder if Cope had a word backstage after that exchange, and then you saw Ricky Starks fail down because he was deemed unprofessional or whatever it was.
He did have a habit of making things awkward, like really awkward. And then like at the time it was like, I don't know why I'm with Big Bill. Like outwardly sort of expresses what are we doing here on TV, you know? There was, in that program as well, there's an interview where they've got the belts and and Tony Schiavone's doing the whole, how can you beat up in the press conference Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega? And Ricky Starks, if you go onto YouTube and type in Ricky Starks, Big Bill, AEW, there's a video where Ricky Starks is asked this question by Tony Schiavone, and he says something like this. He says, I'm surprised that, my man didn't even lose his glasses. And he cannot get the words out. And this happens for a guy who is either a 10 or a 4. In the ring and on the mic, he's either a 10. And how hard is being a 10?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. A 10 or a 4. A 10 or a 0 at times. Sometimes it's so stumbly-bumbly. And then apparently it's pitched, do you want to have a feud with Big Bill? That's how these things go. He might have said, no, don't want to do that. It's not going to work for me, brother. And then he is on camera at the Royal Rumble cheering on Cody. I think he goes to WrestleMania as well. Mm-hmm. And rightly or wrongly, the narrative is he's going to go to WWE with his very good friend Cody Rhodes the second he bounces from AEW. And if you're Tony Khan, you think, I'm not pushing him.
Yeah.
You're joking. Like, why would you? Why would you? If it's true. And then apparently this informs an impasse where Tony Khan seems to believe, Tony Khan on the record will say, oh, he's great. And he will. And he's great. He's a great star. Ricky Starks, I'm good to go and I'm injured. All right, okay. Between the two of you then, if Ricky Starks is, I don't know why I'm not going to work. I'll go to work. And Tony Khan, great. He's been great for us. He's great. Great athlete. Love Ricky Starks. Why on... Yeah, there's something up, isn't there? There is obviously something up.
It's since come
and
out.
Now he's gone, so obviously there was something up.
It came out that he asked them not to pick up the option for one more year, and they did anyway.
Yeah, that's crap.
But
that
would explain one of the impasses, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like if he's outwardly saying, "Come on, guys, I don't want the extra year."
Yeah.
You're having it.
You're having it. I'm not doing anything with you. So yeah. So now when Tony Khan, Ricky Starks going, it's a mystery to me, it isn't. Tony Khan, no, I think he's great. No, you don't. You don't like him because you think he's going to the Fed and all the rest of it. So that didn't do any favors, but you could have argued that well before the impasse and the inevitable ending of the relationship a year before it actually ended, they fumbled them, or didn't they? So I don't know yet. I think I'm actually going to have to come up with my own answer. I will completely scrap from the record this stuff about Ricky Starks being somewhat not nice in a promo. I need to research it while you tell me fumble or no fumble.
Fumble. And I have given this some thought quite a bit today because he is the one I'm most excited about seeing in WWE when it, inevitably happens, do you think? Still inevitable even now? Like maybe a year on from when the discussions first heated up. He's got, by the way, we've got our own little... Ariel Helwani, CM Punk, semi-regular interview session with Andrew Pollard. You can watch the Andrew Pollard, Ricky Starks chats, plural, at WhatCulture Wrestling's YouTube channel. I really like your summary of him being a 10 or a 4. And in my mind, you chase down every 10 you find in wrestling and you go with them. And when I've seen a 10 out of Ricky Starks...
So unbelievably charismatic.
Yeah, when I've seen the 10 from him, I want to... Like, if I'm the promoter, I want to give him everything. And there were times when... It's interesting, this. My biggest argument for Ricky Starks being a fumble, I've seen somebody articulate it as the reason why it absolutely wasn't. Yeah. Which is to say, if you... I think somebody did it on Reddit, and I've seen the screenshot on Twitter, but somebody lists everything that was given to Ricky Starks creatively.
Yeah.
One after another, and they framed it in the way to frame their argument of he's been given chances and it hasn't worked out, and it's a lot. It stacks up. He gets a big stable. He's been given the babyface turn off the back of the stable and beats the big monster to win the feud.
Yeah, I am listening at the same time.
He gets titles. He gets given the opportunity to work a mini program that was supposed to lead to a big match with a CM Punk, and when CM Punk kind of blows that up by what happened at Wembley in 2023.
I'm sorry, I'm very quickly looking on X, and I believe he might have buried Jake Hager's lisp.
Okay, yeah, that does stick out as something like
and
that.
it's like, even if, your mileage varies on what you were offended by and what you aren't, you could at least say at times he didn't have a grasp on when to play babyface as a heel.
Yeah, and
he was in that sort of in between of where should he go? He's too entertaining and too charismatic, but at the same time, sometimes not at all likable as a really sympathetic guy to get behind.
And he didn't always have poise with it.
No, he didn't really have poise. That's the secret thing about the guy who you look at, you listen to, and you think, God, he could talk me into a room for 10 minutes, Sometimes the lack of poise was remarkable.
Yeah.
But then sometimes Kenny Omega doesn't do that well on the microphone,
I don't know. It was their Bryan match was what I was going to say. So yeah, the Punk thing falls apart, and that's not his fault. And he's contributed a lot to that, and it's represented a significant shift, the biggest opportunity yet. Basically, the Punk feud on Collision is the real-life version of what the Jericho thing was supposed to achieve. It is actually working with the guy who's a bigger star, is making him a bigger star. And that Punk blows that up with the Wembley fight with Jack Perry. And what do AEW do? They say,
I'd push back on that a little bit. Okay, go on.
But I would say the ending couldn't have been better for Starks because you end up with the all-out match against Bryan
That's one of my favourite matches of all goddamn time. So Ricky Starks at various points has electrified me like very few of the wrestlers have in my life.
And I would say that would be AEW making the absolute very, very best of Ricky Starks' bad situation there. The very best. So when you see all that lined up, I think you can make the identical argument of they gave him every opportunity with they blew every opportunity.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think we could agree on what happened to Ricky Starks and come up with completely different outcomes.
Yeah.
And I dare say it becomes a matter of taste ultimately, and it becomes a matter of like your feeling towards the guy. I will forever. I think when it comes to Ricky Starks, the early days of AEW, we talked already fondly about the Cody Rhodes stuff and Team Taz. That's preserved in amber to me in such a way, and I'm guilty of this as a fan all the time. I will, as a fan, be loyal to a feeling at my own expense.
Yeah.
I will stick with a wrestler if they made me feel a certain way once, even if they then proceed to not do that 100. I'm not saying that's Ricky Starks in this case, but there are plenty of examples who I don't want to name and be cruel. But if you got me there like almost nobody else could in life, then you've kind of got me. You'd really, really have to ruin it. Jericho's probably a good example.
Yeah.
We all must have felt something for Chris Jericho like that at one point or another, but he gives you plenty of opportunities to forget that feeling. Starks is still there for me. I will remember how he's made me feel at his very, very best, that I will kind of wave away the stuff that hasn't worked and want to see if it can happen again. And I would have wanted to see it in AEW. I think I was so often willing the big bill think it'd be more than it was.
Yeah.
A lot of people did that.
Yeah.
They were funny and they were irreverent, and it felt like, well, we thought it would be a Punk heel turn. We thought it would be like Super Worker again with Bryan. It's ended up being this. But it's good for Big Bill too. Yeah. We all can agree that we like this.
I don't think Ricky Starks was that into it.
Nah.
Personally. And it was almost apparent.
Everybody is saying it, so it's not a hot take at this point to say that like literally everybody is saying, God, the things that WWE are going to do with the Ricky Starks. I don't think you have everybody saying that almost unanimously without producing enough beforehand to make people think it. Yeah. I think if it was more of a question mark, you could argue that maybe Starks isn't that guy, and some of your kind of like assertions of what he's done. But I think it's a fumble, because if you've got a 10 in anything, you make that 10 your money making guy. Yeah, and they never did.
Yeah, I think it's a fumble. Yeah, it's a fumble because even the attitude problems and the rifts that followed before the relationship soured, I think he'd already proved himself. Yeah, it's like a phenomenal episodic TV guy, all-rounder who made people feel things, and that's so rare. Awkward moments aside, a lot of times he just flat out delivered in the spot. Maybe these flashpoint moments were so awkward that they don't tell a true story. You just remember them more, and week to week it would just go by without incident. I think it's a fumble. But I think Ricky Starks will flourish in that WWE environment because he needs a degree of, he needs a bit of control, bit of regulation of, say that in here, in the WWE, and that won't fly. Do not do that again. Tony Khan doesn't seem to have that sort of disciplinary dog in him. That's a new character we can have.
Disciplinary dog.
Disciplinary dog. He just doesn't have that dog in him.
He's got no bark and no bite.
Yes.
It's disciplinary dog.
And he used to allowed unchecked to just create awkward moment upon awkward moment. He just wouldn't do that. He would just get talking to in a big boy company. And I don't like it that much, but a big boy company. I think that with a few more house shows.
Very powerful mates as well.
He's got some very
extremely powerful mates.
Really loyal supporters and all the rest of it. I think he has that pro wrestling spirit in him, and I know he's a student of the game. Not necessarily like this big sports entertainer who's just dreamed of WWE his whole life. I know he isn't. I know he's a proper student of the game, deep research, like the pro wrestling spirit that sometimes WWE doesn't go for or care for or promote. But he is a guy who's got megastar charisma on his best day, and that machine and the way that the machine is pretty harsh in terms of don't do that here. I think it's the best place for him. On the subject of which, before we do the outro, seems stupid because there's nowhere else to go. There's only 2 companies. Possible destinations for the Fumble 3. Right. Aleister Black's going to the Fed.
Yeah.
Ricky Starks is going to the Fed.
Well, he's Defy World Champion now. I think he beat. I know Defy is an indie, but they've gone with him.
All right,
He pinned Kenta for a bail.
He'll just drop it with a low blow, mate. It'll be absolutely fine.
Lose it to their guy.
There's only really one question mark, so I don't know why I've put this in my notes. Malakai Black's going to the Fed.
Yes.
Ricky Starks, right, make it a little bit more interesting. NXT, our main roster.
I was thinking about that before.
NXT.
I think NXT maybe.
It's the men's talent.
It really does. He'd be a great world champion. And he'd be both. He'd be what they've lacked for a while since Ilya Dragunov left, which is a world champion that feels like he's actually getting something from being the champion of that brand, and he's helping others while he goes. Everything you've just said about the if he does something once where he speaks in such a way where they're like, not like that.
Yeah.
That's going to happen in NXT with Shawn Michaels. And then by the time he's
ironically, Shawn Michaels would be the guy to do.
And by the time he's there on the main roster, those kind of edges have been smoothed in a way they like.
Yeah.
That's not to say I want him to be there for very long, but I think it would be great for everyone.
Yeah.
And he'd be awesome. He would also be a bit of a destination wrestler. They like at the moment NXT. They'll get decent numbers. They want to maintain those numbers by bringing certain people in. I could see that, yeah.
Do they take the punt on Miro? Triple H never seemed to get him.
No.
His attitude will have followed him everywhere.
It's a bit of I'm sitting on the fence here a little bit, but he's kind of a perfect TNA world champion. And that's a way in.
Yeah.
He becomes the world champion, the top.
Does he want wrestling anymore himself?
Well, yeah, who knows? There
was rumors that he was going to be in a pilot for things, and
yeah. Or even be a pilot, maybe he could retry. He was a Twitch streamer guy for a bit, wasn't he?
Yeah,
did he give that up? But he could monster his way through that TNA roster, and he's got name value, and now that door is always open ajar, isn't it? And imagine he's in TNA as Miro, and what you get is it'd be like Nick Nemeth rocking back up in NXT, wouldn't it? Nick Nemeth?
Yeah.
You almost can't visualize it, but that's now imminently possible.
Yeah.
I could see Miro making waves as a TNA top guy.
I think Starks and Mally basically, from now, creative plans. Guys thinking about things for these and get the merchandise, the graphic design. I think that the machines are ruling for them to. Miro, I think, the wait. I mean,
do you think they might be waiting
be a
for
report out that he's signing tomorrow out of an hour? I reckon I think they wait a little bit.
As Miro lost, this section of the fans that would have once taken, now, would take Rusev Day signs to buildings and create the groundswell for him. Are they
it's
in
a new
these
audience?
WWE this is what I mean. Are they really in these buildings, or were they part of Miro getting over in AEW and they never come back?
To me, because sometimes CM Punk will make reference to something he's done, even in the Fed, and the fans are just like, yeah, we like CM Punk, so we'll cheer what he's saying.
I love that guy when he arrived at Survivor Series 2023.
Yeah. So I just don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Miro.
Everyone's Ric Flair in 1991.
Yeah.
He says he's a world champion.
Yeah.
That's an
unbelievable take. That's an unbelievable take. That. Yeah, I don't know. If I'm them, I don't know if I'm in a rush. Because Mali's another one. It's you can't have him lose. Penta's just debuted. He's another one where it's don't have him lose very often. Maybe a subversion of that 2021 thing of give them all these talent. They won't know what to do with them. Maybe Levesque could make the same mistake, and maybe pro wrestling is just a curse of bookers making the same mistakes over and over again until you're dead. And on that note, I would like to thank you very much for persevering with this podcast. We had a lot of fun today. And if you want more fun, we've also reviewed Monday Night Raw, which should be available wherever you get your podcasts from. Regularly scheduled programming should return imminently. Join us back tomorrow for yet more daily wrestling podcasts. If you want to continue the conversation, please do on X at WhatCulture WWE, where you can follow us all. You can also follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
You can follow me at Sidgwick. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we will see you soon.